Lonnie David Franklin Jr., better known by the nickname of Grim Sleeper, was an American serial unaliver who was responsible for at least 10 unalivings and 1 attempted unaliving in Los Angeles, California from 1984 to 2007. He was also convicted of R and sexual violence. He earned his nickname when he appeared to have taken a 14-year break from his crimes from 1988 to 2002. In February 2010, he was arrested as a suspect and, after many delays, his trial began in February 2016. On the 5th of May 2016, the jury convicted him of unaliving 9 women and 1 teenage girl. On the 6th of June 2016, the jury recommended the unaliving penalty, and on the 10th of August 2016, the Los Angeles Superior Court sentenced him to unaliving for each of the 10 victims named on the verdict. On the 28th of March 2020, he was found passed away in his cell at San Quentin State Prison. Lonnie David Franklin Jr. was born on the 30th of August 1952 and grew up in South Central Los Angeles. He was married and had 2 children. He was given a dishonorable discharge from the U.S. Army in July 1975 after being released from prison for his conviction of gang-arring a 17-year-old girl in Stuttgart, West Germany in April 1974. Franklin and 2 other servicemen stationed in Stuttgart stopped to ask directions from the teen and offered her a ride home. When she accepted, they put a knife to her throat, drove to a field and repeatedly eyed her. She was able to feign an interest in Franklin and asked for his phone number, by which police identified him. During a gang-ar, photographs were taken by the arists, as Franklin would later do with women he eyed and unalived. In 1989, Franklin was convicted on 2 charges of theft, 1 charge of misdemeanor assault and 1 charge of battery. He only served time for 1 of the theft charges. In the mid-1980s, the LAPD became aware of an apparent serial unaliver targeting black women who were chronic drug users and street S-workers. The unaliver, dubbed the Southside Slayer, was believed to have been responsible for stabbing and strangling at least 13 S-workers between 1983 and late 1985. At one point, unalivings were colloquially known as the In September 1985, the LAPD described the case at a press conference and asked for tips from the public. Following the press conference, the LAPD was heavily criticised for their failure to alert the South Central community to a possibility of a serial unaliver earlier. Activist Margaret Prescott and other community activists held weekly protests outside the LAPD's headquarters in an effort to pressure the department into forming a task force to investigate the unalivings. Prescott contrasted the apparent lack of police interest in the South Central unalivings with the significant attention given to the investigation of Richard Ramirez, the serial unaliver dubbed the Night Stalker, who targeted women in upscale areas of LA and San Francisco between June 1984 and August 1985. Prescott accused the LAPD of indifference to the deaths of the women who were poor, black, drug users and S-workers, which the LAPD denied. By January 1986, 15 unalivings had been linked to the case. More detectives were added to the joint LAPD-LASD investigation, but by 1986 the case was still under investigation. Prescott formalized her group of activists as a community group called the and in March 1986 pressured the LA City Council to increase the reward money they were offering for information on the killings from $10,000 to $25,000. By late 1986, conflicting modus operandi and suspect descriptions caused the investigators to doubt their original theory of a single unaliver being responsible for all the unalivings. Evidence suggested that several serial unalivers, possibly 4 or more, were unaliving women in South LA. The Southside Slayer Task Force began downsizing in 1987 due to the lack of results relative to the expense and manpower being used. Task Force Commander Lieutenant John Zorn told the Los Angeles Times in December 1987 that over the following years, it was found that serial unaliver Louis Crane committed at least 2 of the so-called Southside Slayer unalivings, and serial unalivers Michael Hughes, Daniel Lee Siebert, Chester Turner, and Ivan Hill committed at least 1 each. In addition, some of the unalivings may have been committed individually by the women's pimps or clients unrelated to any serial unaliver. The unalivings of Judith Simpson, Cynthia Walker, and Latanya Johnson, all committed by a 9mm pistol in late 1988, were also investigated by the Southside Slayer Task Force. Sheriff's Detective Ricky Ross was arrested for the unalivings after being found with drugs and an S worker in a vehicle that had a rusted 9mm Beretta semi-automatic pistol in the trunk. Ross was charged with the unalivings after his gun was forensically linked by the LAPD to the bullets from the unalivings. However, he was released after independent forensic analysis found it unlikely that his gun was the unaliving weapon. All 3 of those unalivings remain unsolved. One particular group of the unalivings which were linked by common elements including the use of a .25 caliber firearm remained unsolved and unaccounted for by any other known serial unaliver. The first known unaliving in the series was the unaliving of Deborah Jackson in August 1985, which was linked to the August 1986 unaliving of Henrietta Wright by forensic firearm examination. By 1987, there were 7 victims linked to the same gun, all of whom had been shot in the chest at close range. 2 decades later, the perpetrator of these crimes was dubbed the Grim Sleeper due to the long period of apparent inactivity between unalivings. In May 2007, the slaying of Janisha Peters, 25, was linked through DNA analysis to at least 11 unsolved unalivings in LA, the first of which occurred in 1985. That same year, in secrecy, the LAPD formed the 800 Task Force, composed of 6 detectives and overseen by the Robbery Homicide Unit. After a 4-month investigation, LA Weekly investigative reporter Christine Pelisek broke the news of the task force's existence, the link between Peters' unaliving and the earlier unalivings, and the silence of Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa and Police Chief William Joseph Bratton regarding the unaliver's existence. Villaraigosa and Bratton neither issued a press release nor warned the community. In some cases, LA Weekly was the first to inform the families that their daughters had long been confirmed as victims of a serial unaliver. In early September 2008, LA officials announced that they were offering a $500,000 reward to help catch the unaliver. On the 1st of November, the case was featured on the Fox program America's Most Wanted. On the 25th of February 2009, Bratton addressed the press for the first time regarding the case, at which time the police formally gave the unaliving the Grim Sleeper nickname chosen by LA Weekly. Bratton also released a 911 call from the 1980s which a man reported seeing a body being dumped by Franklin, giving a detailed description of his license plate number of a van connected to the now closed Cosmopolitan Church. In March 2009, Pelisek conducted an extensive interview with Henrietta Washington, the sole survivor of Franklin's attacks. Washington described him as She also described the interior and exterior of his vehicle. Law enforcement missed an opportunity to catch Franklin because his DNA was not previously collected. In 2003, Franklin was convicted of a felony and was serving 3 years of supervised probation. In 2004, voters passed Proposition 69, which requires that DNA must be collected from all felons and everyone arrested on certain specific charges. It also requires the expansion of the DNA database. Authorities collected and sorted through thousands of DNA samples. While he was on probation, Franklin's DNA was supposed to have been entered into the database. It wasn't entered because between November 2004 and August 2005, probation officers didn't collect samples from people who were on unsupervised probation. The probation department didn't have the resources to collect samples until August 2005. Franklin was identified at least in part on familial DNA analysis. Police had found no exact match between DNA found at the crime scene and any of the profiles in California's DNA profile database, so they searched the database for stored profiles and demonstrated sufficient similarity to allow police to infer a family relationship. They found similar DNA belonging to Franklin's son Christopher, who'd been convicted on felony weapons charge in 2008. Christopher was too young to have committed the unalivings, but the familial DNA match led investigators to look at his father Lonnie as the likely perpetrator. One undercover police officer pretended to be a waiter at a restaurant where Franklin ate, collecting dishes, silverware, glasses, and pizza crusts to obtain DNA. According to Cooley, detectives then used a piece of discarded pizza along with saliva found on the victims to establish a DNA match. On the 7th of July 2010, Franklin was arrested. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office charged him with 10 counts of unaliving, 1 count of attempted unaliving, and special circumstance allegation of multiple unalivings. On the 16th of December 2010, the LAPD released 180 photos of women found in Franklin's home after unsuccessful attempts to identify the individuals. who were possibly additional victims. Said Police Chief Charlie Beck. In all, investigators found over 1,000 photos and several hundred hours of video in his home. The images show mainly black women of a wide age range, from teenagers to middle-aged and older, often nude. Police believe Franklin took many of the pictures, which show both conscious and unconscious individuals dating back 30 years. The photos were released to the public in an effort to identify the women. On the 3rd of November 2011, Reuters reported that the police were considering Franklin as a suspect in 6 more slayings. The police were investigating 2 of the 6 potential victims unalive during a 14-year lapse between the initial spate of the Grim Sleeper unalivings that ended in 1988 and several more began in 2002. Of the remaining 4 victims, 2 bodies were discovered in the 1980s and 2 were reported missing in 2005, but the remains of the other 2 were never found, police said. Detectives said that they linked Franklin to 6 additional unalivings after reviewing hundreds of cold case files seeking the public's help in identifying a collection of 180 photographs of women and girls that were found in his possession. Franklin was charged with 10 unalivings and 1 attempted unaliving and held without bail. He was never charged with the death of a suspected 11th victim, a black man, a crime for which DNA evidence wasn't found. After a lengthy pre-trial discovery and several delays, the trial opened on the 16th of February 2016. Closing arguments began on the 2nd of May 2016, and the jury began deliberating on the 4th of May 2016. On the 5th of May 2016, after nearly 3 months of trial and a day and a half of jury deliberation, Franklin was convicted on all counts. His sentencing hearing began a week later on the 12th of May 2016. At the hearing, prosecutors presented evidence relating to 4 other victims they had believed had been killed by Franklin. The 4 victims were not among the original set identified by DNA and ballistic evidence as Grim Sleeper victims. They had only been identified as such after his arrest. 3 victims, Sharon Alicia Dimsuke, Inez Warren, and Georgia May Thompson, were identified as likely Grim Sleeper victims by task force officers investigating unsolved missing persons and homicide reports dating back to 1976. The 4th, Rolina Morris, was identified from evidence found at Franklin's garage after his arrest. She's never been found. Prosecutors didn't charge Franklin with these murders for fear of delaying the trial even further. On the 6th of June 2016, a Los Angeles County jury sentenced Franklin to death. On the 10th of August, the Superior Court sentenced Franklin on each count, naming the individual victims. However, on the 28th of March 2020, Franklin was found dead in his cell. There were no signs of trauma on his body. His cause of death and the results of his autopsy have not been publicly released. 21-year-old Sharon Alicia Dimsuke was found dead in South Park, LA on the 15th of January 1984. She wasn't considered a Grim Sleeper victim until after Franklin's arrest. Evidence linking the modus operandi of Dimsuke's murder to Franklin's other murders were presented at Franklin's sentencing. Deborah Runette Jackson, 29, was shot 3 times in the chest and her body was found on the 10th of August 1985 in an alley near West Gage Avenue in Vermont, Slauson, LA. 35-year-old Henrietta Wright was found dead of multiple gunshot wounds on the 12th of August 1986 in an alley near the 2500 block of West Vermont Avenue in Hyde Park, LA. She was found under a discarded mattress. She may have been killed elsewhere and dumped in the street. Thomas Sylvester Steele, 36, was found dead on the 14th of August 1986 at the intersection of 71st Street and Halide Avenue in Harvard Park, LA. Franklin wasn't charged due to lack of evidence. Police said that Steele was killed possibly because he was a friend of another victim or because he had discovered Franklin's crimes. 23-year-old Barbara Bethune-Ware was found dead on the 10th of January 1987 in the 1300 block of East 56th Street in central Alameda, LA. Benita Rochelle Sparks, 26, was found dead on the 15th of April 1987 in the 9400 block of Southwestern Avenue in Gramercy Park, LA. She had been shot and her body was discovered in a trash bin. 26-year-old Mary Catherine Lowe was found dead on the 31st of October 1987 in the 8900 block of Western Avenue in Gramercy Park, LA. Her body was dumped in an alley and covered after being shot. Latria Denise Jefferson, 22, was found dead on the 30th of January 1988 in the 2000 block of West 102nd Place in Westmont, Los Angeles County. Inez Elizabeth Warren, 28, was shot on the 15th of August 1988. She was left unconscious in an alley and died at a nearby hospital in Gramercy Park, LA. She was not considered a Grim Sleeper victim until after Franklin's arrest. 18-year-old Alicia Monique Alexander was found dead on the 11th of September 1988 in an alley near 43rd Place in Western Avenue in Vermont Square, LA. 30-year-old Enrita Marguerite Washington was attacked in Gramercy Park, LA on the 20th of November 1988. She's the only confirmed survivor of Franklin. She accepted a ride from Franklin before he drove her down an alleyway where he shot her and left her for dead. George May Thomas, 43, died on the 28th of December 2000 after being shot in South Park, LA. She wasn't considered a Grim Sleeper victim until evidence linking her murder to Franklin's other murders were presented at Franklin's sentencing. Princess Cheyenne Berthamau, 15, was found strangled and beaten on the 19th of March 2002 in an Inglewood, California alley. Her body was found by a passerby in the shrubs. She had last been seen by her family on the 21st of December 2001. 35-year-old Valerie Louise McCorvey was found dead on the 11th of July 2003 on Denver Avenue between 108th and 109th Street in Western Los Angeles County. 18-year-old Alea Gabo Desata Marshall was last seen at a medical facility in Hawthorne, California on the 1st of February 2005. She's never been found. The school identification card was found in Franklin's garage. Evidence linking Franklin to Marshall was not sufficient to pursue. 31-year-old Rolina Adele Morris was last seen in the 9000 block of Southwestern Avenue in LA on the 10th of September 2005. She's never been found. A Nevada driver's license and 2 actually explicit pictures of her were found in Franklin's garage. Prosecutors presented this evidence at Franklin's hearing. Janacia Lavette Peters, 25, was found dead on the 1st of January 2007 in the 9500 block of Southwestern Avenue in Gramercy Park, LA. She had been shot and covered with a garbage bag. It has been suggested by law enforcement that Franklin could be possible suspect of the abduction and unaliving of 5 girls in Belize City between 1998 and 2000. Franklin had connection to the county via his marriage to Cynthia Castillo, who was from Belize. In addition, Franklin's 14-year-old break matched the unaliving spring. One of the victim's aunts allegedly saw him in Belize City at the time, and the van he used in one of his proven unalivings was later found in Belize. All served as potential circumstantial evidence of his involvement, however, he was never charged with the unalivings. Edwina Hereford, 19, was found dead on the 16th of May 2010 on the 105 freeway near Garfield Avenue in Paramount, California. Hereford had been pushed from a speeding car going east on the 105 freeway. Her body was discovered within an hour of being thrown up from the vehicle. She had been killed by severe blunt force trauma. She was last seen at Snappy's Liquor near Imperial Highway and Normandy Avenue in West Mountain, California, placing her in the same general area as the other Grim Sleeper killings took place. Asked if Hereford's case could be connected to the Grim Sleeper murders, the lead investigator in the case said they have not yet. Hereford's homicide remains unsolved. 4 missing women are thought to have been among Franklin's victims according to their relatives. The 4 women frequented the area close to Franklin's house where the bodies of his alleged victims were discovered, and all were involved in drug use and work. 32-year-old Catherine Davis was last seen on the 400 block of West 49th Street in LA on the 9th of June 1982. 26-year-old Rosalind Giles was last seen on the 400 block of East 64th Street in LA on the 10th of January 1991. Lisa Renee Knox, 28, was last seen on the 1000th block of 22nd Street in LA on the 11th of May 1993. 37-year-old Anita Yolanda Parker was last seen on the 6000th block of Brinhurst Avenue in LA on the 17th of November 1998.